like I mentioned earlier, it's been very difficult organizing training like this for interested parties. But I think that is today today has been a very wonderful day, and we are looking forward to ensuring that everybody would understand what is going to be discussed here. Our speaker today is uh, Joshua Samoa. Joshua Samoa is a senior meteo officer at the Ghana Meteorology Agency in Accra, and he has been, training a lot of people across the country on this particular weather forecast. I am sure most of you have always received this weather forecast, but the understanding of the weather forecast has been very difficult to most people. There are cases where I would have to go to Facebook to correct some people on how the weather forecast has been interpreted. I mean, some of them just look at the figures and they will say, "Oh, JMate said it will rain," but these forecasts is actually deals with percentages. It deals with probabilities, and therefore, if you don't understand the probabilities, you would always get it wrong when you just look at the face of the forecast and then decide to say that, okay, this is what GMET has said. And therefore, once they have said this and nothing happened, it means they were wrong. And GMET has also improved their weather forecast, alert. They're now they issue it 3 times a day, aside other updates that they'll give, like, weather warnings that come in between these 3 phases. So Joshua Samoa, I will just leave it here so that you would begin with your presentation. We are having only 1 hour. After the 1 hour, we would like anybody who has question can ask. But even if during the presentation and you have a question, you can leave it in the comment box and we can read it to Joshua to explain whatever your question is. So I would plead with everyone to pay attention. This is very important. Once you are able to understand the weather forecast today, then you would also become a champion in your area. You would always be able to tell what will happen, explain to people around you that this is what the forecast really mean. And so I would urge everyone to pay attention to whatever Joshua is going to say today, and it will be very beneficial to all of us. Thank you so much. Joshua, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Nuruddin.
See now, that's fine. So Joshua, you can go ahead.
Thank you, and sorry for
yes, we can see you now.
So okay, thank you so much.
All right, thank you very
Kindly
much.
mute your IE. Jafar, I'm going to make you the host so that you could manage. I just want to get my child, to sleep so that you could manage those coming in.
All right, thank you, Nuruddin, and good evening, everyone. So, like Nuruddin said, my name is Joshua Samoa. I'm a senior meteorologist at Ghana Meteorological Agency, and I work at the Public Weather Office at the headquarters in Accra, in generating weather forecast, and how the last video I'll try to answer the questions that will follow. I'll try and finish in less than 1 hour, so at least we'll have some more time for questions. All right. Most of us already know what weather. Try to use in science to predict the state of the atmosphere over a location for a time to come in the future. We're collecting information from across the country. So we have weather stations scattered across the country that gives us information on temperature, rainfall, pressure, humidity, cloud cover, wind, speed and direction, and all of that. And what we do is we feed this where we use mathematical models and physical laws to predict or project how the conditions that we have behave in the future. And once we have this information, we can now analyze that future project of these atmospheric elements and be able to come up with weather conditions for in the country. Why do we think that weather forecasting is actually important? We know that if we get the information and it's accurate enough, that allows us to prepare and to back in information is going to help us to prepare ahead of time, and that will help us save lives and property. We can also plan our daily activities if we have this information when we need to carry an umbrella, when you need to avoid certain places where you should pass when you're going out, the time you should go the information on how the Chill House National Disaster Management Organization, where the an emergence of weather hazards, and they can now put things in place to salvage the conditions or the situation associated with these weather conditions. There are other importance of weather forecasting, but I'm sure most of us are already aware why it is important to have weather predicted over an area time to come. So here at Ghana Meteorological Agency, we do basically three types of forecast. So the first one that most of us are aware of is the public weather forecast, the one that you usually see in the public domain. And we also have marine weather forecast, where we focus mainly on the ocean space and inland water, providing information on the tide, the sea surface temperature, the visibility of the ocean, atmospheric conditions over the ocean, significant wave heights, and all of that. These are the information that we provide for marine, provide for conditions at the airport are good for them to land, or whether they would have to look for other airports, alternative airports to land. So that's what we provide. But for purpose of this discussion, we'll be focusing mainly on the public weather forecast, which is what we see most of the time in the public domain, because the marine and then the aeronautical forecast are actually provided to specific set of people. So it's not for the public to consume. So we have different time scales of weather forecasting. It starts with nowcasting. Nowcasting is basically from 0 hours to 6 hours. So the information that we provide during this period is what we term as nowcasting. Then beyond that, we go from the hours to days, which is short range to medium range level, where we call sub-seasonal forecast. Sub-seasonal forecast when we provide information from weeks to about months within the season. And then we have the 3 months within. In Ghana, we seasonal forecast each year. The first one comes out for the major rainfall season for south forecast in the southern parts of the country. That's during the minor rainfall season. Then beyond this, yes, in the next 10 years, in the next, Ghana included, is the sun. The sun drives most of the activities that we get here. And we all know that sunshine is not a problem for us here in West Africa. We get sunshine almost every day. And because of this constant sunshine, very dynamic, the changes that will happen in the next 2 hours or 3 hours, few. So that chaotic nature will just generalize the information for that 20 kilometer by 20 kilometer area. And we all know that weather condition differs from one place to the other. You can move some few meters away from where you are, and you see a different weather condition happening in these areas.
Can you start from the limitation? I think there was a problem with the network connection. I don't know if you can, and I'm sure that
sure. No problem. So the first limitation in the atmosphere very frequently. The sunshine hits the earth, you get lots of convection when all the other conditions are favorable. But we know that sunshine in Africa is something that we lack. We always get sunshine. And so because the sun is the basic source of energy for our activities in the atmosphere, the constant sunshine makes the atmosphere quite dynamic. And so within some few minutes, you see a lot of changes happening in the atmosphere. And so if you are predicting the conditions to happen in the next 2 hours or in the next 6 hours, because of this constant changes in the atmosphere, it makes it a bit difficult. In the past, we had just about 5 or 6 stations in the whole of the northern sector. I mean the Upper East, Northeast, Northern region, Savannah, and Northeast regions. All these areas were just getting 5 or 6 informations coming from there to feed our model. If we're using this to represent the whole of the northern sector, obviously you're going to miss a whole lot of places because you don't have information on these areas. There's been an improvement in the collection or distribution of this data sets, but there's still more to be done. In Southern Ghana, we've seen a lot of improvement in recent years, but there's still a lot more we can do to improve, because the models run on this data to be able to provide the projections in the future for us to analyze and give information on what is going to happen in the future. And so if you have limited information to feed the model, then obviously the model will also be shortchanged in a way. There will be some limitations in predicting some model that runs at a 20 kilometer by 20 kilometer resolution. It means that it's considering every 20 by 20 kilometer area as one area. And so all the conditions that is predicted for that area is generalized for the entire locations within that 20 kilometer by 20 kilometer area. And we know that some few meters are. There's also computational performance compute. The physics of the atmosphere is, it's quite difficult to be able to predict the conditions of that, and to be able to compute all the computers and softwares. And we're still, even though we are improving with time, there's still a lot more to be done to be able to capture these and be able to provide the conditions though, but the limitations will just delay the time you have. So computational power should be increased so that you'll be able to limit the time that you need to provide this information out to the public. So these are the reasons why we get a lot of problems. Now we're able to process the data quite faster. We're able to analyze it a bit faster. In the past, we used to get satellite images every 3 hours. When you get one satellite image, it will take 3 hours before you get another one. And satellite images are helping us to understand where we don't have information. We are not getting ground information over a whole lot of places. And so we rely mostly on satellite to be able to see what actually starts with what is happening now. If you have no idea what is happening now, and satellite conditions were happening, we're getting them every 3 hours. So it means that you have to wait for 3 hours before you'll be able to see what is happening in areas where you have no information. And once you get that information, you may have a very short period of time to warn people that these are the conditions that are going to happen, because it took you about 3 hours to get that information. But now, due to the advancements of technology, we are getting information every 15 minutes. That is going to be rolled every 10 minutes. So at least forecast accuracy, and then there will be better now than what we. There's also another for conditions far better based on the advancements of technology that realized in a period to come. We're also able to real time to our data sets or our softwares here at the headquarters to be able to run concurrently. So whilst you are running your models, you're still getting the information, what is happening on the ground, directly on the ground. And so this models helps us to modify the information that we are sending out there and make it more relevant and more efficient to solve the needs of the people. So technology is actually playing a very critical role in forecast accuracy and even the delivery of the services that we provide to the people. So the reason why we is because of the things that I have talked about, the uncertainties around forecast. If you want to do deterministic forecast and tell exactly what is going to happen, these uncertainties will make it very difficult of the event happening and then the areas that it will affect. So there are two ways that we use probabilistic. The first is to tell of the occurrence of the areas that the events that you are predicting will cover. For instance, we talk about occurrence, and I say 60% chance. What I mean is a 60% probability that activity in Accra, in Greater Accra, the likelihood will be different for different than the probability attached event occurring. If I am talking of an area, then the probability about the occurrence. But when we are talking about the distribution, we use certain terms to describe the weather condition that we're expecting. So when we expect that less than 30% are isolated, so anytime you see isolated rainfall, it means that just some few areas within that particular region or sector will be getting the rainfall. If more than 25% up to about 50% of the area will be affected, we use going to be affected, descriptive words to tell of the distribution, and we use the percentages to tell of the occurrence of that, and not use for occurrence and then distributors around Nalebegu, Bolgatanga. We are expecting some cases of rainfall in the morning. So TSRA is thunderstorm with rain, and the probability there is 40%. So it means that there's a place like Sefi Bekwai. You can see that there's mist there, and the chance of the mist occurring is 60%. So if you're in it's a chance that you see. So this is occurrence. So it's for specific areas. It is not for a whole region. And so if you are within the Western North region and you see mist 60%, the quite alone in the Western North region will have a 60% chance of mist occurring. Same for Bolgatanga. It means that there's a 40% chance of thunderstorms and rain in Bolgatanga, but does not mean that the whole of the Upper East region has a 40% chance of getting rainfall. If we use the distribution and we say 40%, then it means that if you pick the Upper East region, you have 40% of base forecast. We only predict the hazard that we're expecting. We don't tell you of what that weather is going to do. So hazard-based forecast tells you what the weather will be, not what it will do. But most of us will agree that hazard-based forecast has its own limitations, in the sense that if I tell you there's going to be thunderstorms or rains in Bolgatanga early tomorrow morning, and you wake up in the morning, you hear some thunder rumblings, you see some lightning flashes, some few minutes, you see some rainfall, and that is all. You go back into sunny conditions. The forecast is not wrong, it's
Joshua,
right.
Joshua, we have, because we are not using the page we have some few minutes. Once I'm going to share a link on the platform so that once this one ends, then you quickly join on that link again.
No problem. So once you see this information, you will not be able to plan well if you're getting the hazard-based forecast, because we are only telling you of the event that is going to happen. We did not tell you of what it is going to do. And so it brings some limitations in this kind of forecast. And so to be able to tackle the limitation in the hazard-based forecast, we introduce what we call the impact-based forecast. So impact-based forecast is what we are seeing on the right, where we try to predict what the weather is going to do instead of what it is going to be. And so here,
you were talking about, yes, this one, for instance, the 24-hour, So I would want you, if you can explain the probabilities. For instance, we were talking about Bolga, so you mentioned some places, Bolga, Sefi Bekwai, and some other places. If you can really to explain what these probabilities, the 80% really mean. And that is where mostly the challenge comes from. Somebody will see that, okay, GMET has said that there will be 40% thunderstorm and rainfall with rain in Bolga. You understand? So the person would assume that once GMET is saying there will be thunderstorm with rain, it is going to rain. It is going to happen. But the person has actually forgotten to look at the figure, the probability that you gave, the 40% probability, which is not even up to 50%. Yeah, so if you can explain that, and then, give a, clearer understanding to them.
Sure, I can do that. I talked about occurrence. So this one is what I meant when I said the occurrence. If you pick Bolgatanga, for instance, this is a location. And so we are given the chance of that location getting the weather condition that we are predicting. So TSRA 40% in Bolga tomorrow morning means that the models that we are using, more of these models are predicting rainfall, but a few of them are predicting that there will be rainfall in Bolga. And so the chance of that rainfall occurring is 40 out of 100. So it means that there's a 60% chance that there will be no rainfall in Bolga. And so but one thing that we should also understand is that sometimes most of the models may be predicting one thing. One of them will predict another thing, but the outcome that you get will be the one that was predicted by just the one. And so the fact that it has a 40% chance of occurrence does not mean that it will not occur. Even though the probability is lower, it does not mean it will not occur. But as what the weather will be, the one on the right tells. And so in this one, which is the impact-based forecast, it helps us to take the country. So Bolgatanga, there's a 40% chance of thunderstorms happening. Take those areas. Even though we're expecting rainfall in these areas, the chance of the event occurring is low. Low means that's less than 40%. There's a letter written in the, if you check the matrix here, A means so low likelihood. If you move down, that is the impact, so low impact. What it means is that chance that rainfall condition will occur is low. And when it occurs to, the impact that it will have on the area is low, meaning it will not have any major disruption of activity within that area. And so if you live within these areas and you see this forecast, you will not be too worried because the whole area is shaded green. And green means there's a low risk in that area, in your area shaded in the color green. Yellow, creating that awareness. But even if you see the yellow, you still want to see the letter that is written in that shaded area. If it is G, G means that the chance that it will occur is high. But when it occurs, the impact will be very low. But if it is E, E means the chance of occurrence is medium. That's from like, and when it occurs, the impact will also be medium. Even though it is shaded yellow, we are still creating the awareness, all right. The chance of occurrence is high, but that event will just have a low impact on the area. But the moment you see E, the impact now increases, even though then when you see orange, orange can either be H, possibility of occurrence, ability. Once you move to the last column, that's where you have I, F, and C. All of these have high impacts. So you never take any of this for granted. If you see that shaded C, F, or I, you never take it for granted. It means that the impact is high. High impact means that it poses some threat to life. You can have major disruption of activities within the area where we're. Is that if it is C, it means the likelihood is low. If it is F, the likelihood is medium. But once it is I, then the likelihood is high. So the worst case is when you have I. That is why it is shaded red, and the other ones have different colors. I is when you have the F and C have high impact, but then the chance of that event occurring is higher when it's F, reduces further when you get to C. So any the color in the area and see your risk, whether it is low, whether we are creating the awareness, whether we are asking you to prepare or we're asking you to take action. Once you've seen the color, also look at the text written in there to tell you of the probability and the impact put in there. And so you see the icons explained here. If it is rain, you just see rainfall. If we're expecting windy conditions, we'll put the wind icon there. If we're expecting dusty conditions, we put that icon there. If it is hail that we're expecting in the area. And so if you have the area shaded, even before you worried because you know the impact is low. And so you just probably just pick an umbrella to what's a serious threat to your life or your property. Then we try to break the sectors, the coast, the forest, the transition, and the northern sector. And so the coast is just areas very close to.
Just before we go there, if you can look at the map, the map, I mean, we have 3 maps and we could see that
Yeah, I'm listening.
Yes, I was talking about the map. Yeah, so now you've spoken about the weather forecast. I mean, the metrics, the risk metric. I'm looking at if you could also talk about how to locate these alphabets in the map. I mean, if you see the 3 maps here, we can only see A throughout. Will it always be the case if you can just elaborate on that. And then Joshua, did you hear what I said?
Yes.
Okay.
So in this forecast, the chance of night to tomorrow afternoon, the chance of it occurring as at 5 p.m. today is low. And when the event happens to, the impact will also be low. That's why we're seeing A throughout. But if we expect that the impact to be higher, then the test in there will change. Could also change the color as well. If we expect that the probability of that event occurring is higher, we'll change the test or the color as well. So it's not always A throughout. It's just that in this example, that is the forecast for the next 24 hours, the probability of occurrence is low. And then the impact of the weather conditions over those areas are also low throughout the 24-hour period. That's why you're seeing the same test across the from one area to the other, if the conditions say so. So we'll see other examples where we have different colors.
Okay, so Joshua, before you go to that again, before you go to that again, I will just take you back to the 24-hour forecast for Ghana. You know, and today's own, for instance, we are having evening, morning, and afternoon. What always happens is that people will pick this forecast and they will assume that once you have stated what will happen in the evening today tonight, you've also stated what will happen tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon. They don't care about the subsequent weather forecast that you would issue. Can you explain why these things are here and why you would want to, in the tomorrow morning, you might even change the forecast? The forecast might even change, and in the afternoon it will change again. Can you just go back and explain? Because I've seen people having some problems with this, especially when you indicate that in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. They rely on this. They don't even check for the subsequent ones, which you always have update. Things could change within that period.
Really be relevant now. So it is important that forecast is updated so that it meets the current conditions of the atmosphere. When you are running any model, you have what we call the base time. So the morning forecast, most of the time, the base time that we use is the midnight run, midnight of the previous day. So we check the midnight run. It gives us the output for the morning, the afternoon, and the evening. Then we give the forecast for this. We update this every 6 hours. So it means the models will be run again at 6 a.m. Once it is run at 6 a.m., you get different conditions because that will be the update of what is happening in the atmosphere. And so you need to issue another forecast to update the existing one. So at any point in time, the current forecast is the existing forecast 11 a.m., but it takes effect from 12 p.m. It means that once it is 12 p.m., now the late one has accuracy. That is why we update the forecast every the conditions. There are times that you see the same conditions that were predicted in the morning.
You mentioned the coastal, the forest, the transition, the northern. Can you please you can understand you better? Thank you.
Sure. So that's the next thing I was going to do. So the breakdown of the country is 4. The 24 is a bit different. We have 5 sectors in the outlook, but for this one is 4. We are talking of the coast, the forest, the transition, and the northern. The coast, we are talking about the southern. So the forest here, we mean the eastern region, the northern portions of the Volta, the Ashanti region, the northern portions of the western and western north regions. These are the areas that fall within the forest region. The transition zone is the Oti region, the Bono East region, the Ahafo region, the Bono, and then the northern parts of the Ashanti region. That's the areas that transit from the forest to the northern sector. And when we say the northern sector, we mean the 5 northern regions that we have.
Well,
so these are the sectors that.
So with the transition, you talked about the northern part of the Ashanti region, right?
Yes, northern parts of the Ashanti region,
is
the
it
Sea
around?
region, the Bono is that's around Ejura areas
Okay.
going into the Bono and Hafu regions.
Mm.
So that's the transition. We try to give minimum and maximum temperature range for these areas. If you want to know the specific temperature for specific areas, you have to rely on the tabular forecast where we tell of the. But for this one, we are trying to generalize the range of temperature to be expected within the day over these areas. So if you pick coastal Ghana, we are saying that temperature will range between 22 and 29 degrees Celsius. The forest will have about 22 to 19 to 29 degrees Celsius. So that's the range that we expect. So that's for 24-hour forecast. And this is the outlook, 3 outlooks every week. The first one is the weekly outlook, and that one covers the entire week. So this one goes out every Monday. So to basically cover the night of Monday and the whole day of Tuesday. That's the 24-hour forecast that you see. Each week is for, yes.
Just go back, I beg you.
Yes, no, then I can hear you.
So can you go back to the previous one?
I am there. Probably maybe the network, because I've already changed the slide.
Okay, so sorry. So kindly talk briefly on the minimum and maximum temperature so that they could get to understand what these things mean.
Okay, so minimum temperature is the lowest temperature we are expecting within the day. The maximum temperature is the highest temperature we are expecting within the day. The range is the lowest temperature to the highest temperature. So it means that if you pick the coast, for instance, the lowest temperature you see in coastal Ghana within that 24-hour period is 22 degrees Celsius. And that usually comes in the morning. But it does not always when they're getting locked in for the afternoon. They tend to reduce the temperature quite drastically. So there are times that you have the minimum temperature occurring later in the day. But usually you get it early in the morning before sunrise, around 6 a.m. thereabout. The maximum temperature is also usually recorded around early afternoon to late afternoon, so around 2 to 3 p.m. thereabout. That's when we usually just used to record temperature. But we have minimum thermometer and maximum thermometer. The minimum thermometer is programmed once it records the temperature that was recorded throughout the day. The same way, the maximum thermometer is also programmed to record just the highest temperature for the day. So if we reset the maximum temperature today, it will start recording the temperature at the time. But as the temperature increases, it will also be changing until it gets to the highest temperature. Once it gets to a particular temperature and it does not record any other temperature higher than that one, it will never change. It will maintain that figure until you go to reset it. So at any point in time, you get the lowest and then the highest for the day. That's what we are capturing here as a minimum. And then I have 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 happening in there. But the lowest you see is 22. The highest you see is 29. Okay. So this, like I said earlier, this is the outlook. So we have 3 outlooks in a week. The first one is a weekly outlook, which goes out on Mondays. And this one tells us of the conditions that we should expect throughout the week. So we break the week down into 3 parts: 24 hours, midweek, and weekend. 24 hours, because this forecast comes out around 5 p.m. on Monday, 24 hours is simply the night of Monday and the day of Tuesday. So that's the 24-hour period. Our midweek is Wednesday and Thursday. Then our weekend is Friday to Sunday. So anytime you get this outlook, you know we're expecting more activities in the northern portions of the country. You can see that all the other areas have green shadings. So it means that there's a low risk in all these areas. But if you go to the northern sector, you can see there's a yellow shading there. So it means there's a medium impact weather expected in the northern parts of the country. So for 24 hours, if you check the table below, you can see that we're expecting scattered thunderstorms over the northern portions of the country. So it should tell you that wider areas within the northern sector will be experiencing rainfall. If you pick the weekend as well, we're expecting scattered some more areas within this scattered conditions there, either isolated, occasional. These are the conditions, or slight rain, drizzle. These are the things that we're expecting in the other sectors. You can also see that we have introduced another sector in this outlook. There's the coastline, there's slightly north of the coastline, middle, transition, and northern. The northern sector is the same 5 regions, 5 northern regions. The transition is the same, the northern parts of the Ashanti into the Bono East, Ahafo areas. The middle sector is the same as the forest areas. That's the Ashanti, the Western North, the Eastern parts of the Volta region. But the difference here is the coastline and the slightly north of the coast. So for people who live close to the coast, you know that if you pick a place like Greater Accra, the weather in Spintex, Nungua, Teshi is very different from the one that happens in Pokwase, Amasaman, Medina. Most of the time, you see a lot of rain happening in the Medina, Pokwase areas, but there will be serious sunshine around the Nungua, Teshi areas. The weather conditions in these areas are very different. And so if we merge all of them together as the coastal sector, it kind of defeats the purpose for which we're creating the sectors. And so to solve this problem, we introduce the coastline and then the slightly north of the coastline. That is breaking the coast into 2 sectors. So coastline is the immediate areas close to the ocean. Then the coastline is the areas that are within the coastal sector, all right, but they are a bit farther away from the ocean. And so if you pick the coastline, we are talking about Aplao, Keta, Angloga, Accra Central, Nungua, Teshi, Tema. In the central region, we are talking about Anomabo, Winneba, Salt Pond. In the western region, we are talking about Axim, Takrade, Hafasini. These are the areas very close to the ocean. So those ones are the coastline areas. When we talk about the slightly north of the coastline, they are still in the coastal sector. So for the western region, in these areas, we are talking about Takwa, Prestia, Bogoso areas. If you come to the Greater Accra region, we're talking about Amasaman, Pokwase, Medina. If you go to the central region, we're talking about Asimfosu, Chifu Praso, Bremane Sikuma. If you go to a place like the Volta region, we are talking about whole areas. These are the areas that are inland. They are not very close to the Akachi. Yeah, these are the areas where we are talking about when we say the slightly north of the coastline. So that's a distinguish the difference between the coastal sector and the one that we are seeing here, which is coastline and slightly north of the coastline. That is the only thing that differentiates the weekly outlook from the 24-hour outlook. So the same interpretation, the color you see there will tell you the probability and the impact of that event occurring in those areas. Just like I said, when I was talking about the 24-hour forecast, there's still a need to update this information. And so on Wednesdays, we update the outlook and bring the midweek outlook. So the first one will talk about the night of Wednesday. The second one will talk about the whole of Thursday. And the last one will talk about the whole of Friday to give you a perspective of how the weather is going to behave during the midweek. Then the last one will come on Friday, which is the weekend outlook. The weekend outlook will also cover what is happening for the night on Friday, the whole of Sunday is given down. But the terms, like I said earlier, we use isolated. You see experiencing random sky within the country. So I talked about the forecasts. I talked about the outlooks. These are routine forecasts. 24-hour forecast always goes out 5 a.m., 11 a.m., and 5 p.m. Outlooks always go out on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
3 times a day.
Yes, that's the 24-hour forecast, 3 times a day.
So it means when you
the
get in the
outlooks,
morning, you should be looking for the afternoon one and in the evening one too.
Yes. And the outlooks too, if you get one on Monday, you should be waiting for the update on Wednesday and then the last update on Friday to cover the entire week. These are routine forecasts. They are sent at specific times within the week or the day.
Okay, so Joshua,
There's no-
why is it so important to continue to look for these updates in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening? I just wanted, people to get to know why these, even though you've gotten the morning one, why it is important to look for the midday one and in the evening one too.
So like I said earlier, at any point in time, there's just one forecast that is valid. And usually the current forecast is the one that is valid because it overrides the previous weather conditions or atmosphere. And so about the changes that we've seen in the atmosphere. So we may send a morning forecast telling you that the whole day will be fair, bright, sunny. But when the afternoon forecast comes, it could change the whole forecast and put rains in the country or the current conditions that is to get to see what the current trends are.
Okay, Mr. Joshua, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Okay, please, where do we get the updates? I've been following Ghana Meteorological Agency, your social media handles, but once a while I just see especially the morning forecast, but the rest we don't get them. So how do we find them, please?
So if
Joshua, let me answer him quickly. Now you are on the platform, and so you would always get it on that platform. Don't worry about that.
Thank you very much.
Joshua,
okay.
I was telling him that
yes,
because we now have a platform because of this training, so we would always put the what do you call it, the alerts on the platform. So you would, if you are on the platform, you always get it.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So like I said, we have the 20 that are sent specific to still send the forecast at these specific times because it has come to stay. Those are the routine times that we send the forecast. Always you get 3 times, but in between these times, there are changes that happen. And when you have sent a morning forecast until it is 11 a.m., you cannot send afternoon forecast. But between 5 a.m. and 11 a.m., there are a lot of changes that can happen. And so what we do is that when we are seeing any significant condition that have been predicted and it's not yet time to issue the update, we send what we call the weather warning, more of the nowcast from 0 to the campus in the different one that we are seeing now here. Areas to be affected and then the times that they will be affected. If you pick this first one, for instance, you can see there's a T equal to 1400, T equal to 1500, T equal to 1600, T equal to 1700. This is not always the same. It differs from one warning to the other. So always make sure you know the time we have stated here. Once you see this time, you move to the areas that have been listed there. So this one, T was 1400, which is 2 p.m. Upper East, Northeast, Hohoi, Jasikan, Dambai, Adonkwanta, Kitikrachi, these areas. We're expecting the weather to occur between 1400 and 1800. That's 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. So if you are in these areas where you come to the right, this is trying to tell you how the weather condition will behave with passing time. So in the first, this so 1400 plus 1 hour. It means that from 1400 to 1500, this is the condition that we expect in Upper East, Northeast, Hohoi, Jasikan areas. It means that there's a high probability of a medium impact weather occurring in the first 1 hour. in 2 hours time, that is from 1500 to 1600, the probability reduces from high to low, but the impact is still medium. In 3 hours time, that is third hour from 1400, then beyond the 3 hour period. So it means that anything after 1700, so 1400 plus 3 is 1700. So after the 1700, everything that you'll be expecting in that area will be a low probability and a low impact. That is telling you the intensity, how it's going to behave, the frequency, like the time scales within that period where we expect the conditions to occur. If you come down here, stats. But if you are in a place like the Upper East, the forecast was sent at 1 p.m. You have just 1 hour before the storm. Sorry, I was talking, I didn't know I was muted. So the weather warning tells you when the event is going to start in your area, how it is going to behave, like the changes in the intensity and the impact within the period where we expect the event to occur, the time you have before the event starts, and then the impact that it will have during that period when we expect the event to occur. And so for this weather warning, for instance, if you pick this, people who live within the Upper East, Northeast, OT, parts of the northern region, parts of the water region, are the areas that will be of the highest concern because their color there is orange. And orange means that we are telling them to prepare for the conditions there. And the conditions that we are talking about here are strong wind and rainfall. So these are the things that you should look out for when you see the weather warning. So rain, wind are all in this area and they are shaded orange. So it means that the risk is higher. So you should prepare for those conditions. The next area of concern will be the southwestern portion. That area is shaded yellow. So it means that we are creating that awareness for them. They also are expected to get some strong winds and some rainfall activities, and the impact will be medium. But the least area of concern will be the upper west and then the Savannah regions where we expect a low risk. And so their color is green. And so once you pick this warning, just at a glance, you'll know the areas where there's a need to concentrate on. If you don't find yourself within the yellow or the orange areas, you'll not be too worried. Even though we expect rainfall in your area, you don't expect that the chance is high or the impact will be high. And so you'll not be too worried. But for the other areas, that is where you need to take some critical decisions to avert the danger associated with the conditions in there. So once you pick a weather warning in times, so this weather warning is not sent every day. It is not routine. It can be sent anytime. We can send it even 4 times or 5 times in a day. As long as we are seeing conditions that necessitate the issuance of the weather warning, it will be out to the public. So this one comes in to fill all the changes that we will not see in the routine weather forecast that we have been sending out there. And so anytime you see a weather warning, it means that there's a significant change in the weather that have been predicted. And so you need to give it a particular attention and see the areas where it will be affecting. Because we don't just send weather warning for any type of weather. It is only weather conditions that will have some impact on life and property that are considered when we are sending weather warnings. And so it is very important. The other outlooks also could capture weather conditions that are of high significance. But the difference is that these ones are routine. Weather warnings come as and when it is necessary. So in between the routine updates, we'll still be sending ones. But for the purpose of today, this is where I would end the discussion. I want to thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you so much, Joshua. We are so grateful for your time. If you have any question to ask, most of the people have left. I think it's because of the internet connection. But if you have any question to ask, please kindly do that quickly so that we would. Any question?
Hello, Mr. Joshua.
Yes, sir.
Yes. When should we expect the minor seasonal forecast, please?
It's actually ready. Latest by next week it should be out. It's actually ready. So this week, and so next week it should be out.
So Joshua, what is being circulated enough from Gmail?
I think some of the stakeholders who got the information shared it, but it's likely virtually that was actually shared. We do a lot of consultations before the forecast comes out, so that is probably why somebody probably leaked the information. But we are trying to analyze it, so the one that will come out will be slightly
on I want to know maybe if there's a clue as to whether in the season minor seasonal forecast the rain could take us up to November or December. Can you please tell us something
please
about it?
for which area?
Northeast, please.
Northeast. I think we have about 2 months. We have about 2 months or so to get rains. It will definitely not go into November. By October, you should where you can get information. And actually, we as accurate as the station data. So what we have done is to use the station data to correct the bias between the satellite data and the station data. And after, yes, sorry.
I think the internet hasn't treated us well. It's been difficult, and I suspect that's why most of the people couldn't join. I mean, so Mr. Justin, are you now okay? I think you had some sequence, some.
The question.
Very grateful. I'm a morning host for my radio station, and we usually give out
Justice, thank you so much. I think it's been very fruitful, just that the internet wasn't good to us. But I think that those who joined actually enjoyed it. And I mean, usually I think we should have more time to educate people on this, because there was a time I saw someone posted on Facebook. He came to post your weather forecast in the morning, and it was like he said something that was actually he wanted to just criticize it, and I came to comment, and because he saw my comment, he didn't reply me, and he left that post. I was going to come back to update it, but if you rely on the morning, just the morning forecast, you might have issues with GMET, because the afternoon one would come and things might change. The evening one will even come and everything will change. And even if you don't monitor the weather warnings, you are likely to miss a lot of things, because the weather warning will come to tell you that what has really changed within a certain period that you might miss. So thank you so much. I think we will need to have another time because the network was not good today, and we would have a conversation. And Justice, you can also invite your colleagues to join. I mean, it's important that everybody just to understand this weather forecast, so that you would really know the kind of work GMET is doing. Thank you so much, Joshua. I don't think we'll be able to pay you for this, but
yeah, that's I'm always available. So anytime you want to.
All right, thank you.
Let me know. And also let me know. We have a Zoom link that is unlimited, so I can use that one to create the link, and then
that's fine.
we don't have this back and forth.
I forgot to. All right, we'll do that next time, God willing. All right. So if you have any question, you can leave it on the platform. Joshua is on the platform, and you will attend to them. Thank you so much. So good night.
I'll do that.